The Uneducated Wife.
In the bustling city of Nigeria, there was a wealthy family known as the Okafors. Mrs. Okafor was an educated woman, very strict, and believed that whatever she said was always right. She had two daughters, Grace and Joy, and one son named Philip. Mrs. Okafor and her daughters had a girl named Chamaka in mind for Philip to marry. Chamaka was educated, beautiful, and from a wealthy family too. However, Philip had other plans. He fell in love with a girl named Ifeoma, who sold fruit in the market. Ifeoma was not educated. She couldn't read or speak good English, and she don't know how to cook properly. Despite this, Philip loved Ifeoma for her kind heart and gentle spirit. He decided to marry her against his mother's wishes. When Mrs. Okafor found out about Philip's decision, she was furious. She thought Ifeoma was not good enough for her son. Ifeoma moved into the Okafor mansion, but life was very hard for her. Mrs. Okafor would often scold her and sometimes even beat her. Ifeoma tried her best to fit in and make Philip happy, but it was not easy. She often spoke wrong English, which made her mother-in-law even angrier. One day, Ifeoma was cooking dinner and Mrs. Okafor entered the kitchen. She saw Ifeoma pouring Fanta into the pot of stew. "What are you doing, Ifeoma?" she shouted. "I dey make stew, Mama," Ifeoma replied nervously. "You don't know how to cook. You don't know how to speak correct English. How do you want to take care of my son?" Mrs. Okafor yelled, raising her hand to hit Ifeoma. Ifeoma covered her face, scared of the slap that was coming. She felt so much pain, not just from the beating, but from the harsh words. Every day was a struggle for her, but she never stopped loving Philip. She hoped one day Mrs. Okafor would accept her. Philip tried to protect Ifeoma, but he couldn't always be there. He loved her deeply and wished his mother could see the good in her. One evening, after another day of scolding and beatings, Ifeoma sat alone in her room, crying. She wondered if she would ever be good enough for her new family. As she cried, she heard a knock on the door. It was Philip. He sat beside her and hid her hands. "Ifeoma, I am sorry for all the pains you are going through. I love you and I believe in you," he said gently. Ifeoma wiped her tears and nodded. "I love you too, Philip. I go try make my best to learn and be better," she promised. Philip smiled and hugged her. "We will get through this together," he assured her. But the road ahead was still long and filled with challenges. Mrs. Okafor's anger and strict rules made Ifeoma's life very difficult. Yet Ifeoma's love for Philip and her determination kept her going. Ifeoma's life in the Okafor mansion grew more challenging each day. Mrs. Okafor continued to find fault in everything Ifeoma did. One morning, Ifeoma woke up earlier to prepare breakfast for the family. She wanted to prove she could be a good wife for Philip. She decided to make jollof rice, a dish she had seen Mrs. Okafor cook many times. As she walked in the kitchen, she accidentally knocked over the pot of rice, spilling it all over the floor. Mrs. Okafor stomped into the kitchen when she heard the noise. "Ifeoma, what have you done now?" she screamed. "I dey sorry, Mama. It was accident," Ifeoma stammered, trying to clean up the mess. "You are useless. You cannot cook. You cannot clean. You can't do anything right," Mrs. Okafor yelled, grabbing a broom and hitting Ifeoma with it. "Get out of my kitchen." Ifeoma ran out, tears streaming down her face. She felt so small and helpless. She went to her room and cried, wondering why life was so hard. Later that day, Philip found Ifeoma sitting alone in their room, her eyes red from crying. "Ifeoma, what happened?" he asked gently. "Mama beat me again. She said I no fit do anything right," Ifeoma whispered, looking down. Philip hugged her tightly. I am so sorry, Ifeoma. This is not fair to you. I will talk to Mama, he promised. But talking to Mrs. Okafor was not easy. She was a woman who believed she was always right. When Philip approached her, she refused to listen. Philip, that girl is not good enough for you. She can't even cook rice properly, Mrs. Okafor argued. Mama, I love Ifeoma. She is my wife and I need you to accept her, Philip insisted. Mrs. Okafor shook her head. I will never accept her, she said firmly. Days turned into weeks and Ifeoma's struggle continued. Mrs. Okafor made her do all the hard chores around the house. Ifeoma had to fetch water, wash clothes and clean the entire mansion. She was often too tired to do anything else. One day, Mrs. Okafor called Ifeoma into the living room. Joy and Grace were there too, smirking at her. Ifeoma, you need to learn how to cook properly. Today, you will cook for all of us and it better be good, Mrs. Okafor ordered. Ifeoma felt nervous but nodded. Yes, Mama, she said quietly. She spent hours in the kitchen trying to cook a meal that would please Mrs. Okafor and her daughters. She made pounded yam and a egusi soup, but she was unsure if it was good enough. When she served the food, Mrs. Okafor took a bite and spit it out. This is terrible. You call this food? She shouted, throwing the plate at Ifeoma. Joy and Grace laughed, enjoying Ifeoma's humiliation. You should go back to selling fruit in the market, Grace sneered. Ifeoma's heart broke a little more each day. She felt so much pain and rejection, but she held on to her love for Philip, hoping things would get better. One night, Ifeoma was in the kitchen trying to prepare dinner. She was exhausted and accidentally cut her finger. Blood dripped onto the floor and she started to cry. She felt so alone and defeated. Just then, Mrs. Okafor walked in and saw the blood. You can't even cut vegetables without making a mess. You are hopeless, Ifeoma, she shouted. Ifeoma couldn't take it anymore. She ran out of the kitchen, through the front door and into the dark street. She don't know where she was going. She just wanted to escape the pain. Philip found her sitting by the roadside crying. Ifeoma, please come back home, he begged, his voice full of worry. I can't, Philip. Mama hates me. I don't belong there, Ifeoma snubbed. Philip knelt beside her and took her hands. You belong with me, Ifeoma. I will protect you no matter what. Please let's go back, he pleaded. With a heavy heart, Ifeoma agreed to return. But she knew the challenges were far from over. Mrs. Okafor's harsh treatment and her daughter's mockery continued to make life unbearable. Ifeoma returned home with Philip, but she felt even more determined to prove herself. However, every day was a struggle. Mrs. Okafor and her daughters continued to belittle her, making fun of her wrong English and poor cooking skills. One evening, as Ifeoma was trying to cook dinner, she accidentally burnt the stew. Mrs. Okafor came into the kitchen and sniffed the air. Ifeoma, what have you done now? She yelled. I burnt the stew, Mama, Ifeoma said, trembling. I will cook another one. You don't know anything. You don't know how to talk. You don't know how to cook. What kind of wife are you? Mrs. Okafor scolded. Philip walked in and saw his mother shouting at Ifeoma. Mama, that is enough. Ifeoma is trying her best, he said firmly. Her best is not good enough, Mrs. Okafor snapped. Philip took Ifeoma's hand and led her to their room. Ifeoma, I will help you. I will teach you how to cook and how to speak better English, he promised. Ifeoma looked at him with tears in her eyes. You go teach me? I go try, Philip. I won't make you proud, she said. Every night, Philip would sit with Ifeoma and teach her how to read, speak proper English, and cook traditional dishes. It was hard work, but Ifeoma was determined. She practiced every day, repeating words and phrases until she got them right. One day, Mrs. Okafor asked Ifeoma to cook dinner for a special family gathering. Ifeoma felt nervous, but she had been practicing what Philip and felt a little more confident. In the kitchen, Ifeoma carefully followed the recipe Philip had taught her. She made jollof rice, egusi soup, and grilled chicken. She also set the table and arranged the dishes beautifully. When the family sat down to eat, Mrs. Okafor took a bite of the jollof rice. Her eyes widened in surprise. This, this is actually good, she exclaimed. Grace and Joy tasted the food and looked at Ifeoma with amazement. Did you really cook this? Grace asked. Yes, I cooked am, Ifeoma replied, smiling. I mean, yes, I cooked it. Mrs. Okafor nodded approvingly. You have improved, Ifeoma. Maybe you are not so hopeless after all, she admitted. Philip beamed with pride. Ifeoma, you did it. I am so proud of you, he said, hugging her. Over time, Ifeoma's English improved and she became a better cook. She no longer made mistakes like using Fanta to make stew. The family started to see her in a new light. They realized how hard she was working to fit in and how much she loved Philip. One day, as Ifeoma was reading a book with Philip, she smiled and said, I go talk better English now. I mean, I will speak better English now. Philip laughed and hugged her. Yes, you will, Ifeoma. You have come a long way. The moral lesson, Ifeoma's journey taught the Okafor family a valuable lesson. They learned that love, patience, and hard work can overcome any obstacles. Mrs. Okafor realized that being educated and wealthy did not make someone better than others. She saw that Ifeoma's determination and kind heart were what really matters. Ifeoma's story showed that everyone deserves a chance to prove themselves, that with support and encouragement, anyone can grow and improve. It reminded everyone that kindness and understanding are more important than wealth and status. The end. Thank you guys for watching and please come back for more stories. I love you.